The galaxy was wide and bright, filled with thousands of species, each stranger and more beautiful than the last. Ships crossed the stars like silver birds, carrying diplomats, workers, and dreamers from world to world. Yet in this vast ocean of life, one rule stood higher than all others. No alien was allowed to touch a human. The law was simple, repeated in every station, written in every treaty. Physical contact with humans is forbidden. No exceptions, no excuses. The reason was never explained to the humans. The official words were always the same, a matter of safety and respect. But the truth was different. Aliens knew what humans did not. They knew why the Accord, the great council that ruled over peace among the stars, had placed that law above all else. They knew what touch could awaken, and they feared it. Eli Ward, a young human translator, lived under that shadow every single day. He worked on Velos Prime, one of the largest interstellar stations in orbit above a blue and golden world. The station was like a floating city, filled with glass halls, humming engines, and languages from across the galaxy. Eli's job was to sit in the translation chambers, listening carefully to words that twisted and bent in alien tongues, then turn them into English or standard speech. He was good at it. In fact, he was one of the best. Humans had a strange gift for languages. Their minds bent easily, filling gaps, leaping across meanings where machines struggled. The Accord valued that skill even if they kept humans at arm's length in every other way. And Eli felt that distance every day. Aliens spoke with him, yes. They respected him, sometimes even praised him. But they never came close. They never touched his shoulder when thanking him, never shook his hand, never reached out the way humans always had with one another. The space between him and them was like an invisible wall, thick and cold. For a while, Eli told himself it didn't matter. He was here to work, not to make friends. But as weeks became months, the emptiness grew heavier. Back on Earth, touch had been everywhere. Handshakes, pats on the back, hugs from family, even a stranger brushing against him in a busy street. He had never realized how much it mattered until it was gone. Now, in the heart of the galaxy, he was surrounded by voices, faces, and light. Yet he had never felt more alone, until he met her. Her name was Sira. She was Alari, a tall, elegant species whose skin shimmered faintly, like stars reflected on water. The Alari were known for their grace, their calm logic, their almost musical voices. Many humans found them intimidating, but Eli found himself drawn to them, especially Sira. She was young like him, and though her voice carried the same smooth calm as her people, her eyes were different. Most Alari looked at humans with a kind of polite distance, but Sira looked at Eli with curiosity, with warmth. At first, their conversations were only about work. She needed help translating ancient records, and he guided her through the strange twists of human thought that machines could not grasp. She was patient, asking questions that showed she wanted to understand, not just finish the task. Eli began to look forward to her visits. He caught himself smiling more when she was near. And then it happened. It was a quiet evening in the translation hall. Most workers had gone, leaving only the soft hum of machines and the faint glow of screens. Eli sat at his desk, tired but content, when Sira walked over with a datapad in her hand. "Could you check this line again?" she asked. Her voice was soft like wind through glass. He reached for the pad. She reached too. Their fingers brushed. It lasted less than a second. Skin against skin. Warm. Real. Eli's breath caught in his chest. A spark ran through him, bright and sudden like fire bursting in the dark. He had not realized how empty he was until that single tiny touch filled him. His eyes shot to hers. And Sira was smiling. Not the calm, polite smile of diplomacy, but something smaller, softer, a smile that was only for him. Eli froze. His voice cracked. "That's forbidden." "I know," Sira whispered. She pulled her hand back slowly, but her eyes never left his. "But you look like you needed it." His heart pounded. No one had touched him since he left Earth. No alien had ever dared. And now she had risked everything for him. Eli should have been afraid. He should have told her never to do it again. The Accord punished violations harshly. He had heard rumors of aliens who had been removed from duty, even exiled for less. But instead all he could whisper was, "Thank you." That night, Eli lay in his small quarters, staring at the ceiling. His hand still tingled where her fingers had brushed his. He replayed the moment again and again, wondering why it had felt so powerful, so right, when it was supposed to be wrong. And in the silence of the station, a thought grew in his heart. Maybe the Accord's law was not about safety. Maybe it was about fear. Because if one touch could make him feel alive again, what else could it do? The rule had been broken once. A single brush of fingers. A single forbidden touch. Eli thought it might end there, that Sierra would keep her distance after realizing the risk. But she did not. From that day, something unspoken began between them. A secret language that no one else could see. When she passed him data pads, her fingers brushed his again. When they leaned close over a glowing screen, her shoulder rested lightly against his. When she gave him a pen, her hand lingered a moment too long. Each touch was small, almost nothing. But to Eli, they were everything. In a galaxy where even handshakes were forbidden, where warmth was outlawed, these tiny stolen moments were like oxygen. They reminded him of home, of family, of being human. They reminded him that he wasn't just a translator, a worker in a glass cage. He was alive. But every gift has its shadow. Eli knew the risk. Everyone knew the stories. The Accord punished contact violations with cold, merciless force. Whole careers were destroyed over less than a touch. Some aliens who had broken the law had disappeared quietly, shipped away to far-off colonies, never to be heard from again. And humans? Humans who became the reason for such crimes often carried scars that never faded. One evening, after a long shift, Eli and Sierra sat together in the quiet hall. The other translators had gone. The lights had dimmed. Outside the tall windows, the stars burned bright against blackness. Sierra sat close beside him, their shoulders almost touching. The glow of the screen painted her silver skin in soft light. Eli wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled inside him. Finally, he whispered, "You shouldn't do this." Her head tilted slightly, eyes shining. "Do what?" "Touch me. Break the rule." His voice was low, heavy with fear. "If someone sees—" For a moment, her gaze dropped to her hands. Then slowly, she lifted her eyes back to his. "I know the rule," she said gently. "But I also know how alone you feel here." Eli's throat tightened. He wanted to deny it, to pretend he was fine, but the truth pressed too hard against his chest. She was right. He was alone. More alone than he had ever been in his life. And though fear burned inside him, he could not tell her to stop, because her touch was the only thing that made the cold galaxy feel warm again. The next days only deepened the secret. In the busy translation chambers, they acted like nothing was unusual. Sierra's calm expression gave nothing away. But whenever their hands brushed, Eli felt the hidden fire again. Whenever their shoulders touched, his heart beat faster. He began to look for excuses to stay near her, to share her work, to walk the same corridors. And though Sierra never spoke of it, he could see in her eyes that she was doing the same. It was dangerous. It was foolish. But it was also beautiful. The danger soon showed itself. It started with whispers, small sharp words in alien tongues when Eli passed, glances that lingered too long. The space around him in the cafeteria seemed colder, emptier. And one evening, as Eli and Sierra left the translation hall together, the danger took shape. A tall Elari stood in the corridor, waiting. His skin shone a deeper silver than Sierra's, his eyes sharp as blades. Eli had seen him before, an elder respected among the Elari diplomats. "His name was Voss, Sierra," Voss said, his voice low but firm. "A word," Sierra stopped. Eli froze beside her, heart racing. Voss's eyes flicked to Eli, then back to Sierra. "You endanger yourself," he said in their flowing tongue. "The accord is clear. Humans are not for us. Do not forget the law." Eli understood enough of the words to catch their meaning. His chest went tight. Sierra's reply was steady, though Eli noticed the tension in her voice. "I remember the law," she said. "But I also remember my choice." Voss's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, his gaze sliding to Eli again, cold and full of warning. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. The silence left behind was heavy. Eli's hand shook. He swallowed hard. "He knows." Sierra's eyes met his. There was fear there now, clear and sharp. But when she reached out, her fingers brushed his wrist. Even trembling, she broke the rule again, and Eli realized something. It wasn't just kindness anymore. It wasn't just comfort. Sierra was choosing this, choosing him, even when the risk grew sharper. That night, Eli could not sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his small room, replaying Voss's words. He thought about the Accord, about the punishment they gave. He thought about the stories, the rumors, the quiet disappearances, and he thought about Sierra's hand, brushing his even when she was afraid. Each rumor struck him like a blade. He could not eat. He could not sleep. Every star he saw outside the station windows felt distant, cold, mocking. The warmth Sierra had given him, the courage, the hope, the fire, was gone. And with it, a part of himself seemed to fade too. But even in despair, Eli did not give up. He had to find her. He had to know she was safe. The thought of letting the Accord erase her from the galaxy, as easily as they erased their laws, was unbearable. At night, he replayed every memory of her touch. The brush of fingers over a datapad, her shoulder against his when reading screens, the warmth of her hand on his cheek as she whispered that he was braver than he realized. He clung to these moments like a lifeline, each memory both a comfort and a reminder of the peril they now faced. Eli began to plan. He studied the station's schedules, the security rotations, the reports of off-world transfers. He spoke to sympathetic aliens in quiet corridors, people who had watched Sierra's courage and admired it in silence. Slowly, pieces of a plan formed. He could not rescue her immediately. He was a human, untrained in combat with nothing but determination. But he could gather information. He could wait. He could prepare, and he would, because Sierra had risked everything for him. She had broken the law, faced punishment, and remained unbroken even in chains. She had trusted him with her courage, and he would honor it. Eli clenched his fists. The galaxy had tried to take her from him, to erase the fire she carried. But he would not let them, not while he could still breathe, not while he still felt the echo of her touch, and he knew something else, something deeper. Even in chains, Sierra's defiance had planted a spark. The secret fire they shared had already begun to spread, even if neither of them fully realized it. Others had seen, others had noticed, and when the time came, that spark could ignite a change that the Accord would never stop. But for now, all Eli could do was wait. And remember the warmth of her hand, the courage in her eyes, the quiet fire of a rebel who had touched a human, knowing the risk and chosen him anyway. It was enough to keep him alive. For now, the station felt emptier without her. Every corner, every corridor, every glowing panel reminded Eli of Sierra's absence. Her laughter, her warmth, her defiance, it was all gone. Only the memory remained, echoing like a distant star he could no longer reach. Days turned into nights, and nights into restless dreams. Eli searched every sector of Velos Prime, asking quietly, carefully about Sierra's whereabouts. Each question earned a shake of the head, a polite refusal, or worse, a sharp glare. Officials spoke in riddles or vague phrases. She has been taken for judgment, await her transfer. Her trial is confidential. Eli's chest ached. Fear gnawed at him, but he could not stop. He had to find her. He had to see her, even if the Accord intended to erase her existence from his life. He spent nights piecing together schedules, security patrols, and transport manifests. He noticed small details others overlooked: the timing of off-world shipments, the presence of certain officers near the tribunal chambers, the subtle tension in alien workers' faces when Sierra's name was mentioned. Slowly, a plan began to form, not a rescue yet, but information, knowledge, strategy. He could not storm the station armed. He was human, untrained, and alone. But he could gather allies. He could prepare. He could fight in ways they would not expect. Every night he traced Sierra's path in his mind, from the translation hall to the holding cells, her last touch against his wrist. He clung to that memory like a lifeline. Each time he imagined her eyes, steady and courageous despite the chains, he felt his resolve harden. Finally, Eli knew he had to act. He approached the tribunal chamber, a large circular room where the Accord met and judged infractions. His heart pounded, his legs trembled, but determination carried him forward. Inside, the chamber was cold and silent, alien leaders seated in a perfect circle. Their silver skin glowed faintly in the soft lights, their eyes sharp and unyielding. Eli stepped forward, unarmed and alone, but unafraid in a way he did not fully understand. "You fear us," he said, his voice shaking at first, then growing steadier. "Not because we are dangerous. Not because we wield weapons or know secrets. You fear us because we remind you what it means to feel. You fear our humanity because it stirs something inside you that rules cannot control." A hush fell over the chamber. Aliens shifted in their seats, glances exchanged, but no one interrupted. "You punish my friend," Eli continued, voice rising, "because she touched me, because she felt, because she chose to care. And now you try to erase her, but I will not allow it. She is alive. She is brave, and if you think fear can silence us, you are wrong." A ripple passed through the chamber. Whispers in alien tongues, quiet but tense, carried the weight of curiosity, concern, and fear. The leaders leaned closer, intrigued by this human who dared to speak. Eli took a deep breath. "If touch is forbidden, then I will break the law too. Not in secret, not in shame. Bring Sira back to me, and I will show you that the fire you fear is not destruction. It is life, it is courage, it is connection. It is what the stars intended for us all." The room was silent again, heavier than before. Some of the elders shifted uncomfortably. Others stared, eyes narrowed, unsure whether to laugh, to punish, or to listen. The tribunal did not respond immediately. Instead, they observed him, calculating, weighing, testing. Eli's heart raced. Every second felt like a lifetime. Then one of the elders spoke, voice low and deliberate. "You are bold, human. You risk more than you understand." "I know," Eli replied. "I risk everything because she is worth it, and because the galaxy is worth it. She is not a danger. She is a light." A murmur ran through the chamber. Aliens exchanged glances. Some leaned forward, curious. Some frowned, unsure, but all felt the tension in the room. "You speak of fire," another elder said. "But fire burns quickly. It destroys as easily as it warms. How do you know it will not consume you both?" Eli's gaze did not falter. "Because it is not meant to consume. It is meant to awaken. It is meant to remind you that life, real life, is worth everything. Touch a human and you will see. Feel what we feel and you will understand. Fear is not the law of the stars. Connection is." As Eli spoke, something began to change. Whispers spread among the attendants, not loud enough to disrupt the tribunal, but clear to those who were listening. Sira's colleagues, other Elari, even guards, all had seen the moments of stolen courage, of secret defiance. And now, seeing a human rise with words so full of heart, they began to question. It was subtle, almost invisible. A nod here, a glance there, a hand that lingered a moment too long. But the fire that Sira had sparked, the fire that had made Eli feel alive, was spreading. The tribunal remained tense, but Eli could feel it. He was no longer alone. He was never truly alone, and then slowly the doors opened. Security officers led Sira into the chamber. Her wrists were still bound, but her posture was proud, her eyes steady. When she saw Eli, she let her gaze rest on him for a moment, and he felt the warmth of her courage reach him across the room. Without words, she communicated everything they had shared: trust, defiance, love, and the quiet fire that had begun in stolen touches. Eli stepped forward, closing the space between them. "I will not let them take you," he whispered. Sira's lips curved slightly, a quiet, defiant smile. "I know," she said softly but firmly. The chamber held its breath. Aliens and humans alike felt the tension, the courage, the defiance. For the first time, the human and the alien shared a moment not of fear but of choice. Eli reached out his hand. Slowly, carefully, he placed it over hers. The warmth was immediate, radiant, unstoppable. And then the fire spread, the chamber gasped. Dozens of eyes widened. Dozens of aliens shivered as though the spark had leapt into them. Something ancient and powerful. The human spirit filled the room, unstoppable in its quiet, courageous strength. The Accord had feared this. The fire they feared. The power of connection and choice, but it was alive and it could not be contained. The chamber fell silent. The fire between Eli and Sira was impossible to ignore. Their hands intertwined, their gazes locked, and the warmth of their touch rippled outward, a quiet defiance that challenged the very rules of the Accord. For a long moment, the alien leaders said nothing. The tension was so thick that Eli could feel it pressing against his chest. Every eye in the room seemed to be on them, some in fear, some in awe. Then, slowly, Sira spoke. Her voice was steady, calm, carrying the weight of courage that had brought them here. You fear us because we are human, she said. You fear touch because it awakens something you cannot control. But fear is not law. Love is not law. Connection is not law. These are life, and life cannot be silenced. Eli felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. He had never heard her speak like this, not in whispers, not in secret. Now her voice carried across the chamber, every word cutting through the cold walls of protocol and fear. One of the elders shifted, his expression unreadable. And you, human, he said, voice cautious. You risk your life, your freedom for her. I do, Eli said firmly. Because she is alive. Because she is brave. And because humans, we feel, we connect. And no law, no rule, no accord can take that away. Another elder spoke, tension in their tone. You speak as if we do not understand, yet you do not comprehend the danger. Touch, connection. It is forbidden for a reason. You cannot see the consequences. Eli's gaze hardened. I see them. I see the cost of fear, the cost of silence. I see what you are trying to protect, and I also see what you are trying to destroy. I see courage waiting to burn, waiting to ignite. And I will not let it die in the shadows. Not for her. Not for me. Not for any human who comes after us. For the first time, a murmur ran through the chamber, not of argument, but of understanding. Some leaned forward, curious. Some stared, trying to suppress the recognition stirring inside them. Eli realized what was happening. The spark that Sira had started, her defiance, her courage, her choice, was spreading. Even among the alien leaders, even among the guards and officials who had feared it, the fire of humanity could be felt. Sira lifted her chin, eyes shining with pride and courage. Do you see now? She asked. Touch a human. Feel what we feel, understand we are not weak. We are alive, and we will not be silenced. The room trembled, not physically, but in the shift of minds and hearts. Rules, traditions, and fear wavered. For the first time, the Accord had to confront something it had never expected. The raw, uncontainable power of connection. Then Voss stepped forward. His silver skin glimmered, his eyes narrowed, but Eli saw something in him he hadn't before. Recognition, respect, perhaps even awe. You have courage, Voss said slowly, carefully. More than many of my people, Eli nodded. Courage is not about avoiding fear. Courage is about standing in it even when you are alone. I am not alone anymore. She is with me, and that changes everything. The officers and leaders in the chamber exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. Eli saw hesitation, confusion, the stirrings of doubt in those who had enforced the law without question. It was a small victory. But even small victories mattered. The tribunal finally reached a decision, not one of punishment but of compromise. Sira's defiance could not be ignored, nor could Eli's bravery. They were not exiled. They were not punished. Instead, the Accord decreed that their actions would be observed, studied, and understood before any further judgment was passed. It was not perfect. It was not free, but it was enough, because in that moment Eli and Sira had shown the galaxy something it could not deny. That touch, connection, and courage were stronger than any law. That life could not be chained by fear. That humans, fragile, small, and yet indomitable, could awaken the fire within even the oldest, most rigid of systems. Later, when the chamber emptied, Eli and Sira remained together, hands clasped, their fingers intertwined. No words were needed. The warmth of their touch spoke for them, stronger than any proclamation, louder than any law. You risked everything, Eli said softly, for me, for us. Sira smiled, gently brushing her thumb over his knuckles. No, we risked nothing. We only chose life. We chose courage. We chose each other. Eli's chest tightened with emotion. I don't know if I can ever thank you enough. You don't need to, she whispered. Just remember this. No rule, no fear, no accord can take away what we choose. What we feel. What we share. And for the first time since he had arrived at Velos Prime, Eli felt the weight of fear lift. The loneliness that had haunted him. The emptiness that had pressed against his chest. The cold void of a galaxy indifferent to humanity. It all began to melt. Because they had found each other. Because they had broken the rules. Not out of rebellion for its own sake, but out of the deepest human need. To touch. To connect. to feel, and in that touch, they had changed the galaxy. The stars outside the station glittered brightly that night. Ships drifted across the void, unaware of the quiet revolution occurring within a single chamber. But Eli and Sierra did not need the galaxy to notice. They had each other. That was enough. For the first time, Eli understood the full meaning of what she had told him months ago. Touch a human, and you awaken something the universe cannot contain. He held her hand a little tighter, feeling the spark of warmth run through him, and he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter what dangers or rules or fears arose, they would face it together, because courage, connection, and humanity were more powerful than any law, and sometimes a single touch could change everything. It made no sense. Why would she risk everything for him? He was just a human translator, one of many. He had no power, no wealth, nothing to offer. But then he remembered the way she looked at him, the way she smiled, not the polite mask her people wore, but a true, quiet smile meant only for him. Maybe it wasn't about power. Maybe it wasn't about safety. Maybe it was about something the Accord didn't understand, something stronger than fear, something like connection, something like hope. Eli turned onto his side, pressing a hand to his chest. The warmth of her touch still lingered there. He knew this could not last. He knew the risk was growing. But for the first time since he left Earth, he felt alive. And if the galaxy wanted to take that away from him, it would have to fight harder. The secret could not stay hidden forever. Eli and Sierra had tried to be careful. In the crowded translation halls, they kept their distance. In the presence of others, they behaved like colleagues, nothing more. But the truth has a way of shining through, even when you try to hide it. Others began to notice. It was in the way Sierra stood closer to Eli than to anyone else, the way her voice softened when she spoke to him, the way his eyes followed her across the room without meaning to. Even if their touches were brief and stolen, the air around them carried something different, something fragile, dangerous, and alive. At first it was only whispers, a translator murmuring to another as Eli passed, a flicker of alien eyes across the hall. Sierra's people were sharper. They felt the shift sooner. He saw them watching her, their gazes cool and heavy as though weighing her choices. Eli tried to ignore it. He told himself they were imagining things that no one could know. But deep inside he knew the truth. Secrets never stayed secret forever. One evening, after a long session of negotiations, Eli and Sierra walked side by side down the glass corridor that led toward the living quarters. Outside, stars glittered like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Ships drifted between them, glowing like insects around a lantern. Eli felt calm in her presence, as he always did, but that calm shattered when a figure stepped out from the shadows of the hall. It was Voss. The elder Ilari stood tall, his silver skin gleaming under the corridor lights, his eyes sharp and steady. He looked at Sierra first, then at Eli. "Stay," Voss said, his voice heavy in their native tongue. "We must speak." Eli froze, his stomach twisting. He could not understand every word, but he caught enough. Sierra straightened, her face calm, though Eli noticed the slight tremor in her hands. "What is it, Elder?" Voss's gaze was cold, his voice sharp. "You walk too close to him." "Already they whisper. Already they see. You endanger yourself. You endanger us all." Sierra's jaw tightened. "I do my work. I break no law in the hall." Voss's eyes narrowed, sliding toward Eli. "Perhaps not in the hall. But laws are not broken only in public." His tone carried the weight of accusation, of suspicion sharpened into warning. Eli's heart pounded. His hands curled into fists at his side. He wanted to speak, to defend her, but fear locked his tongue. Finally, Sierra said quietly, "I know the law, Elder." She paused, then added firmer, "But I also know my choice." Voss's gaze hardened. He held her eyes for a long moment, then turned and walked away, his steps echoing down the corridor. The silence he left behind was heavier than his words. Eli swallowed hard, his voice low. "He knows." Sierra's eyes lingered on the empty hall where Voss had disappeared. When she looked back at Eli, there was fear in her gaze now, clear and sharp. But even then she reached out. Her fingers brushed his wrist, trembling but still there. It was not comfort. It was defiance. Even with fear pressing on her, Sierra broke the rule again. For him, Eli's chest ached. He wanted to tell her to stop, to protect herself, to let him bear the loneliness alone. But the words would not come, because every touch, every stolen spark felt too precious to lose. The next days were harder. The whispers grew louder. Some aliens gave Eli space, too much space, as if afraid to even walk near him. Others stared openly, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disgust. In the cafeteria, a group of Ilari rose from their table as soon as he sat down, leaving without a word. In the hallways, conversations hushed the moment he entered. Sira bore it quietly. She still came to him, still sat beside him in the chamber, still touched his hand when no one else could see. But Eli noticed the shadows under her eyes, the way her shoulders stiffened when others stared too long. It hurt him more than the whispers ever could. One evening, when they were alone in the small storage room beside the translation hall, Eli finally spoke what had been clawing at him for days. "This is my fault," he said, his voice breaking. "If you keep doing this, if they catch you, you'll lose everything. Your work, your people, maybe even your freedom. I can't let you take that risk just for me." Sira looked at him for a long time, her eyes soft and steady. Then, without a word, she reached out and placed her hand against his cheek. Eli froze. The warmth of her palm burned against his skin, gentle but fierce. His eyes stung with sudden tears. "You don't understand," Sira whispered. "This is not only for you. It is for me. I choose this. I choose you." Her words sank deep into him, heavier than any fear. That night, Eli lay awake again, but this time not with guilt. He thought of Sira's hand on his face, her eyes burning with quiet fire. She was risking everything, not out of pity, not out of kindness, but out of something stronger, something the Accord feared. Because it was no longer just comfort, no longer just warmth. It was connection. It was rebellion. And Eli knew with a shiver that was both fear and hope that their secret was no longer just theirs. Others had seen. Others were watching. The walls were closing in, but so was something else, something powerful enough to break through them. Days had passed since Voss had cornered Sira in the corridor. The whispers and glances around the station grew heavier. Every step Eli took felt like walking through invisible eyes, every corridor a test. The tension was suffocating, and yet despite the fear, Sira continued. She continued to work beside him, continued to touch him in secret. A brush of fingers here, a hand lingering there. Every time Eli felt that familiar spark, the warmth, the fire, the reminder of being human in a galaxy that wanted to erase that feeling. But curiosity gnawed at him. And late one night, in the quiet of the translation hall, he finally asked the question he had been avoiding. "Why?" he whispered, his voice small in the empty room. "Why is it forbidden? Why is touching us so dangerous?" Sira looked at him. Her silver skin shimmered faintly under the glow of the holographic lights. Her eyes softened. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she leaned back slightly, her fingers resting on the desk just inches from his own. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost like a confession. "Because you change us," Eli frowned, confused. "Change you how?" She exhaled slowly, a trembling breath that made her look fragile in the dim light. "When I touch you, when any of us touch a human, I feel something I should not. A fire, a courage, a strength, a feeling that wakes parts of me that the Accord tells me must stay asleep. They fear it. They forbid it. They say if enough of us felt what I feel, the chains of order that hold the galaxy together could break." Eli blinked, trying to process it. It sounded impossible, almost like a story from an old myth. Yet when she finally reached out, her fingers brushing against his own, he felt it too. A warmth intense and alive, spreading from his chest to his fingertips. It was more than comfort. More than kindness, it was revolution, born in a single, stolen moment. Sira's hand lingered, and she looked into his eyes. "The Accord does not want us to feel this way. They fear what touch can awaken." Eli's heart pounded. "And you risk everything for me?"